Howdy y'all, I'm back with another really long video essay about some deep r/Polandball lore that you might not be aware of, but I've been around long enough so I know exactly where to look and who to talk to, and I can't help but include every single detail I can think of because I don't always know what to cut. I really enjoyed putting together the world map video because it was an opportunity to highlight one of the coolest projects that r/Polandball has brought to the internet, but today I'm here to talk about one of the most prominent Polandball artists this community has produced because they deserve to have their time in the spotlight, and admittedly, people who have seen their comics anywhere other than the subreddit might not even know who the artist was in the first place, so let's get into it. The Reddit Polandball community has been around now for just under a decade and a half. During that time, we've seen a lot of incredible artists come and go over the years, and when I say incredible, I'm not exaggerating. A lot of the comics posted to the main subreddit and the individual art pieces posted to the sister subreddit r/Polandball art feature artwork that looks like it should be posted to any other place on the internet other than a subreddit about balls. Countryballs, that is. Though wiggly mouse-drawn comics is the tagline you'll see just about anywhere Polandball related, it's clear that even a limitation like that is not enough to prevent people from creating utterly beautiful works of art that can stand entirely on their own merit. But what makes Polandball unique as a medium is that it's not always the best-looking comics that receive the best reception. You could use advanced tools, you could apply your art school-acquired techniques, you could paint the Polandball equivalent of the Mona Lisa, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to your sense of humor and your ability to execute a joke that determines the success of your comic on r/Polandball. This has been true since the very beginning of the medium in the Crouchan days, and is even true to this day. That's not to say high art is never appreciated. Quite the contrary, in fact. Some of the best performing comics in the history of r/Polandball also have some of the best artwork we've ever seen, but if you ask anybody who has been subscribed to the subreddit, or any of the moderators what they like best about their favorite comics, the answer you'll usually get is that the writing and the humor always come first. So what happens when you combine incredible artwork with equally incredible writing and humor? It's this very intersection that the subject of today's video inhabits, which is why I wanted to start this series by talking about one of r/Polandball's premier artists and writers, Hinadira. From the very beginning of their time on the subreddit, all the way to their most recent comics posted within the past few weeks, Hinadira has been drawing and writing some of the best comics that r/Polandball has to offer. They are easily one of the best artists we've ever seen come through the subreddit, producing incredible art pieces that are conceptually and compositionally above and beyond the average submitter's comic. They're also one of the best writers we've ever seen, with jokes and punchlines that are surreal, absurd, clever, and just plain funny. I've included links to some of my favorite Hinadira comics down in the description because I don't want to spoil too many jokes, and their comics need to be experienced in order to fully appreciate what they bring to the subreddit, so go check those out when you finish this video. Or, actually, right now, since browser tabs exist. I'll be here when you get back. You might imagine that an artist/writer like Hinadira would hit the ground running with the best comics you've ever seen, but even their career began with a humble approval request after seeing some Polandball comics elsewhere on the internet. Hinadira submitted their first comic to r/Polandball in February 2015 after earning submission rights, and it's here that their history with the subreddit begins. A user's first post isn't always the best indicator of what kind of artist/writer they will eventually become, but in Hinadira's case, this comic contains many hallmarks of their unique writing style, and foreshadows many of the artistic developments that would soon follow. Even Hinadira's first comic was simply about some of the history they knew about their own country. Speaking as a moderator of r/Polandball, what I think sets Hina's comic apart from other approval requests I've seen about history is how Hinadira created a narrative and a story with that history, complete with a great punchline. I wish Reddit's mod mail allowed me to go through the archives and find the original approval request, but I do have the link to the comic down in the description so you can see it for yourself in context. Another interesting thing to note about their first comic is that Hinadira's perspective as a Polish person results in a realistic and accurate portrait of Eastern European countries in a way that other users can only guess at, and you can see this influence not only in their approval comic, but throughout their entire body of work. And yes, you heard me, Hinadira is Polish. I reached out to Hinadira to get some comments and deep lore for this video, and on the subject of being a Polandball artist from Poland, they had this to say. Poland and Polandball is very different to what I am used to. In school in Poland, most of my knowledge of the past comes from history lessons or literature lessons. In the history, they usually run out of time after covering World War II. I was lucky. I got some history of the PRL, Commie Times Poland. There were a lot of dates, atrocities, oppression, emigration, failed uprisings, ally betrayals, and of course, wars. As far as the literature angle, a lot of Polish literature was about getting independence back. That was almost all wieszcze, or poet prophets, wrote about. So much so it was satirized. The elephant in the Polish question, for example. In the nutshell, if I were to make a Poland character based on these, they would be traumatized, paranoid, extremely stubborn, and very wary of strangers. And serious. Very serious. It's hard to have fun with heavy subjects weighing in the air. That is nothing like the Polandball Poland, who is made out of the stereotypes of foreigners. So, a silly, stupid plumber character, who wants into space but can't for some reason. He is way nicer to make comics with than the anguished character I was more familiar with. I'd never drawn a comic before I found r/Polandball, but thankfully the bar for entry was quite low, and that was good because I did not feel confident about creating comics. Naturally, I wanted to write what I knew, so my comic was just a bit of history that I knew. After gaining submission rights on r/Polandball in early 2015, Hina continued to draw and post comics to the main sub to the tune of a few hundred upvotes at a time. It was a modest start for sure, but they were only just getting started. In October 2015, only 8 months after Hinadira gained submission rights, a comic called The Greatest Enemy was posted to r/Polandball and is currently considered to be one of the greatest Hinadira comics of all time, not to mention one of the greatest Polandball comics of all time. This comic is also a milestone in the history of r/Polandball, being the first collaborative Polandball comic to reach the #1 position on the subreddit's top comics of all time, as well as being the comic that ultimately brought Hinadira into the spotlight as one of the subreddit's most recognizable artists. What you might not know about this comic is that it wasn't initially posted by Hinadira. Instead, the comic began as a script posted by Seleno Seisteen to the now defunct Polandball Arena, the former hub for collaborative Polandball projects. I was fortunate enough to receive comments from both Hinadira and Seleno Seisteen regarding the conception and creation of this comic, as well as Hinadira's decision to remain anonymous at first and eventually to go public as the artist, and they had this to say. As a German interested in history, I've been always fascinated by the topic of what Germany's dark Nazi past means relative to its entire history, and what it means to modern Germany. It's a subject that features in multiple of my earlier comics, starting from German history since 1945, which I drew all the way back in 2011, and was the first comic I've submitted to r/Polandball in 2013. One day in January of 2014, this topic was again on my mind, and inspired by two things, I came up with the script. The first inspiration was the old contest thread, Battle Against Your Greatest Enemy, which made me think about who Germany's greatest enemy would be, coming to the idea that it would be Nazi Germany, i.e., itself from the past. The second inspiration was an extremely weird form of burn-made Polandball comic where Nazi Germany travels through time and comes into conflict with a changed modern Germany, giving a rough idea of how their interaction could look like. This resulted in a dramatic script I named The Greatest Enemy and posted on r/Polandball Arena, free for any interested artist to take because it would require drawing skills way above my capabilities. I quickly forgot about the script and focused on other projects, e.g. in May of 2015, for the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, I posted Who Am I?, my only non-low art comic ever, in which I again addressed Germany struggling with its past. It's quite an emotional comic, and with it, I felt I had said everything I wanted to say about the topic. That's why I was completely thunderstruck when, on July 17th, 2015, totally out of the blue, I received a message from an anonymous account who had turned my script, The Greatest Enemy, into a massive comic sketch. Not only did that sketch contain over 50 panels, but it was of a spectacular art quality the likes of which I had never seen before. I was blown away by the sheer amount of work and creativity the creator had put into the sketch. Of course, that nameless artist was no one else than Hinadira. Immediately, we started messaging back and forth intensively to further develop the comic. During the creation of The Greatest Enemy, I eventually found out Hinadira's main account. She had already posted some Polandball comics onto it before that. However, she wanted to remain anonymous to the general public, so I posted the comic on October 5th, 2015. Who wouldn't want to remain anonymous at first? When one creates something, and it is genuine, it is scary to show it to the world, especially since satire is really antithetical to sincerity. But since it was a collaboration, I couldn't just say, you know what, let's just throw it into the trash and not do it. I feel too squeamish about it. So I just decided to remain anonymous as a compromise. You can't hurt somebody you don't know, right? What contributed to that is my experience of my art being considered weird. I often doodled on the margins of my notebooks and inside my school books too. So much so, a teacher once gave me a notebook to doodle in so that I don't fill school books with stick figures. I remember my physics teacher, who was examining our notebooks regularly because we were doing our homework in them, mentioning that my art is weird. It was. I was doing stuff for myself with no intention of showing it to anybody. To say that The Greatest Enemy was a massive success is an understatement. We not only received a multitude of positive comments, I get messages about it to this day, but so many upvotes that we reached the all-time #1 spot on the subreddit, earning us the only Red Collaborator Hussar Wings ever awarded. According to Imgur, the comic has been viewed over 1 million times, and the epic video that LL made from it even more than 3 million times. This torrent of positive reactions eventually convinced Hinadira to step into the spotlight and reveal herself as the artist, and the rest is basically history. All artists have eventually learned to give over themselves and acknowledge their things as theirs. With time, as I got more confident, I decided there was no point in hiding anymore. Although maybe I should. Maybe The Greatest Enemy artist would become Polandball's weird secret. Nah, it probably wouldn't. People would notice the similarity of the art style and that I was doing more collaboration with Seleno Seisteen. Fun fact about The Greatest Enemy, the comic forced a significant rule change on the subreddit regarding the coveted Hussar Wings award that affects how that award is earned to this day. For those of you who don't know, on r/Polandball, Hussar Wings were originally created by Java Code as an award to be given to subreddit subscribers in 2 specific cases. When a user wins one of the contests we hold on the subreddit, and when a user's comic reaches the #1 spot on the top comics of all time. With every pair of Hussar wings a user earns, they are entitled to special cosmetic embellishments displayed on the subreddit next to their username. For example, upon earning a second pair of wings, the user is entitled to a special, unique flair that no other user has. Upon the third pair of wings, the user earns the title Pan next to their username, and so on and so forth. Neither the wings nor the titles look quite the same on mobile or new Reddit, and neither does a lot of our unique subreddit design, so you may still see some people suggesting that the best viewing experience for r/Polandball is found on old Reddit. With the dominance of mobile and new Reddit changing the way the award is displayed, the wings have become less significant to the modern-day Reddit Polandball experience. But on r/Polandball in 2015, they were a big damn deal, and not just to the subscribers. After it was revealed that Hinadira was not simply an artist who wished to remain anonymous, but rather an already approved user on the subreddit, and as the greatest enemy was quickly approaching the #1 spot on the subreddit, the mod team engaged in a serious discussion about whether or not Hussar Wings should be awarded to both contributors in a collaboration comic. I have a unique perspective as one of the mods engaged in that very discussion, and rereading through the one thread I could find was quite enlightening. Java Code was initially against what seemed like a devaluing of the Hussar Wings by making them accessible to 2 users at once, the thought being that if we awarded 2 full pairs of wings for one collaboration comic, then what happens if another collaboration achieved the top spot again? What happens if that collaboration involves more than 2 individuals? This was long before we realized that the world map had the potential to reach the top spot in any given year. Other mods argued that this was such a rare and unique circumstance that awarding 2 full pairs of Hussar Wings for the achievement would neither devalue the wings nor encourage copycats, and that awarding Hussar Wings for collaborations of more than 2 users would be discussed if/when the issue ever came up. It was ultimately determined that both Hinadira and Selenocysteine would receive a unique variant of the award for this achievement, given their equal parts in bringing this masterpiece to life, and the precedent was set that for any collaboration comic created by 2 individuals, if their comic reaches the #1 position on the top comics of all time on r/Polandball, they will be eligible for a special red pair of Hussar Wings. As Selenocysteine mentioned, this has only happened once in the history of r/Polandball. The screenshots of the greatest enemy that I've included won't even remotely do the comic justice, so be sure to click the link to the original post in the description below and take your time reading the comic. It is truly one of the best Polandball comics that r/Polandball, really the entire internet, has ever seen. The greatest enemy isn't the only collaboration that Hinadira has contributed to, nor is it the only collaboration they've done with Selenocysteine. In fact, there are enough collaborations between Selenocysteine and Hinadira that I feel the need to talk about those in this video for more than just a minute or two. Here's Selenocysteine again on collaborating with Hinadira. The way we would do all our collaborations is by writing messages via Reddit, typically every few days. They were usually quite long and very detailed, full of specific research, ideas, plans, Easter eggs, and many sketches where Hinadira would update panels again and again to incorporate updates and new ideas. I often felt slightly bad because I gave such a detailed feedback with so many tiny things that we could still add to perfect the comic, but Hinadira wasn't bothered. She simply drew them and in turn introduced many of her own thoughts and ideas into our projects. In fact, our cooperation was always very positive and stress-free, and we connected over the countless messages sent. Most of all, Hinadira was incredibly productive, with the entire monumental work of The Greatest Enemy going from first sketch to publishing in just 2.5 months. Hinadira always puts so much work and so much love in her comics, it really shows. Our collaborations definitely are the greatest creative projects I've ever participated in. Speaking as an enjoyer of good Polandball content, and also as a moderator of r/Polandball and a self-appointed historian of Polandball lore, I believe Hinadira's collaborations with Selenocysteine have resulted in comics that are above and beyond most collaborative works that come through the subreddit. The only exception to this being the annual world map. The Hinadira-Selenocysteine collaborative effort Finish conversation was even turned into an animation on this very channel, and The Greatest Enemy is still one of the most iconic comics of all time. Please be sure to check out the comics I've linked down below because they are incredible. I can also speak for myself as the beneficiary of collaborating with Hinadira. Some of you may know me as the creator of the World at War and Cold War series of comics on r/Polandball, but I take every opportunity I can to remind people that the final 6 chapters of the series were finished by Hinadira. Sometime in 2019, they asked me if I had any intention of completing the Cold War series that I had started some years before that, and never got around to completing. By that point, Hinadira was an icon of the subreddit and arguably one of its most recognizable artists. I was flattered and honored that Hinadira, of all people, wanted to help finish this series out strong, but I was completely blown away not only by their interpretation of the original ideas scripts I had for those final chapters, but also by their uniquely Polish perspective about the latter half of the 20th century. Those final chapters truly would not have been the same if any other artist had offered to help complete the project, or if I had managed to finish the series myself. What's more, Hinadira elevated the individual comics with a ton of hidden Easter eggs and hidden drawings that take the serial to a whole new level I couldn't have even dreamed of. Reflecting on my own personal experience with Hinadira is a great reminder of why I wanted to start this artist feature series with them in the first place. comics. One of the special things about Hinadira is that even 9 years after submitting their first approval request and posting their very first comic, they're still drawing and posting new comics to the subreddit. They're still actively collaborating with other artists to bring really cool art pieces to the subreddit. They continue to contribute artwork to the world maps and the calendar, and once in a blue moon they'll even peek out into the Discord community to chat about artwork or whatever else comes up. On being part of the wider Polandball community, Hinadira had this to say: "I think Polandball allowed me to find appreciation to the process of creating stories and satire. As a student, I was really into science. I still am. I work as a programmer. Reason, logic, and math are at heart of my interests and what I like to do. If it was not for Polandball, I'd probably box myself into that pigeonhole of logic over emotion camp. Polandball has become a cozy place for me, where I can draw a silly thing that I chuckled when I was falling asleep, or a place where I can put a piece I'd drawn that people wouldn't think is too weird, or a place to tell a story that made me sad in the bus and made me cry so that a person sitting next to me asked if I was okay. So I had to explain to them that I was crying because I was trying to make a story in my head more emotionally impactful." And with that, all that's left for me to say is please spend some time reading some Hinadira comics and appreciating one of the single best Polandball comic artists and writers to ever come through the subreddit. You should also check out Selenocystein's comics as well, but I may end up doing a solo feature of him sometime in the future. Keep your eyes and ears peeled for another video on the horizon. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment, and have a good rest of your day. Bye, y'all.